Hello and welcome to Edinburgh Business Stories. EBS is hosted by myself, Alex Richards of Umore, a video production studio based in Edinburgh and Bristol, and Alan Smith of Action Coach, providing business coaching throughout Edinburgh and the Lothians. If you aren't already, remember to subscribe, and I hope you enjoy this upcoming episode of Edinburgh Business Stories. A big thank you to Rathbones for partnering with us on this episode. Rathbones. Invest well, live well. Austen and Ally, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks very much for having us.
Give us a snapshot of who you guys are and what your business is.
Oh, do you want me to go?
I'll be polite and let you go first for a change.
All right, thanks. Austen Clark, CEO of Jera IT. We are a MSP practice from Aberdeenshire, Edinburgh, and offices in Glasgow as well. Are we doing the origin story just now?
We'll go there in a minute.
We'll come back to that. All right, so that's me. Over to my business partner, Bernhard.
I'm glad you're finished. Right. My name's Ally Hollins-Kirk, and I'm the Managing Director of Jera IT. We're currently a team of about 20 staff, and we look after small to medium enterprises across Scotland. Typically, it's things like IT support, cyber security, how to implement things like AI, and actually how to create a roadmap of how you want to use technology over the next 3 to 5 years in your business.
Amazing. Now, you guys are probably the first, I think, merger that we've had on the podcast. So you've both done interesting things and you've come together recently. So it'll be a little bit different, and we'll hear from you kind of separately to begin with, and then we'll end up at the merger. But yeah, who wants to go first on their origin story in terms of getting into...
I started, so I might as well finish. So mergers, I'll take it back. Slightly interesting journey into the world of IT, but I was a farmer. So I started from a country farm, family farm up in the northeast of Scotland. And there I was farming for nearly 10 years, full-time, sheep, cattle, cereals, family heritage. And realised that this was not going where I was wanting to go. We had a lot of problems within the industry. My brother had a company called Clark Computer Systems, and he asked me if I would go and join him. So from that point, I went into a space where I was no longer just one-man band on a farm. I was actually starting to interact with people. And that's where I realized one of the skills I had, which was networking. So I got very involved in networking. I was within BNI for 10 years. I then got involved in HTG/Evolve. I'm nodding to Ali because that's how we came together. My brother ran the company.
All the secrets.
No,
we're only 2 minutes into the podcast.
So my brother was had started Clark Computer Systems, and I got involved in it. So we ran the company together for nearly 20 years. And then about 10 years ago, it was actually 10 years ago to last weekend, my brother reminded me that I had the opportunity to buy my brother out of the company. And it's probably one of the proudest moments I've had in my career, was able to see my brother through the journey of building the company to a point he could exit out of the company. And I was be able to be the catalyst to do that. Still very good friends with my brother. He's still one of my keys and my mentors. I go to him for guidance. And from that point, I was then running the company for the next 6 years. And we'd built up a pretty good brand as far as we were Clark Computers Limited. We had been involved in a lot of around peer networking. We'd been involved in the industry. We'd been involved in speaking events. So reasonably well-known brand at that time. And then Ali and I met, and we came through an organisation called HTG or Evolve. And off the back of that, we then had a conversation. So that's where my journey got to.
Mm-hmm. Ali?
I didn't do any farming. No, our story's slightly different. Just after Y2K, that big disaster that never actually happened.
Yeah.
I was working on a IT contract, or as a contractor, actually down in the Scottish borders, where I met my soon-to-be business partner. And we're working away, and we said, why don't we set up a business doing IT support? And it was almost like an epiphany at that moment. A really dull one with a small light bulb on the ad. And so we set up the business. And for us, we thought we were actually doing really well. So we got to the 1 year mark. Yay, successful business makes it to the 1 year mark. Only 1 in 10 million get this far. And then we got to the 5 year mark. It's like, yay, even less get this far. And we're like, right, this is... And it was about 8 years before we started to make a difference. And when I stopped crying, because up until that point, really the business, we called it a lifestyle business, but there was no style in it. And really it was just indentured servitude. We were working for the business rather than the business working for us. And as I said, about 8 years in, that started to change. And that was a combination of education, outside influencers, and actually seeing what good could actually look like. And that started the journey. But what was interesting about that particular part was that's when the splits started to happen between myself and my business partner at that time. And it wasn't until 2017, we'd grown to about 10 staff. We were bobbing around the sort of 1 million revenue mark. And we just kept going up and down there. So we'd hit this glass ceiling. But what we realized is that we both wanted very, very different things from the business. And so that led to the exit. And probably one of the biggest regrets of my business career is that we haven't spoken to each other since that exit point. And that's what, 8.5 years later. We then started to accelerate a little bit from that. And then Austen and I met, we'd obviously met each other in HTG several times. And I mean, they had a big impact. I can say for myself, they had a big impact on our lives. There was one of the famous people in the US, a guy called Arlen Sorensen, another guy called Harden Byers. We had someone come over. I did a life plan for 2 days where we spent a whole lot of time just talking about me, one of my favorite topics, and really put your life in perspective to look at, right, where have you been? What have you achieved? What do you want to achieve? And it's when I first heard the term opus gloria. And it's the idea at the end of your life, you're looking back on it, what have you done? And really, what have you made a difference? How have you made a difference to everyone else that's been in your life? And that's been a real tenet of my own perception now. So we met in Florida.
We did.
This episode of Edinburgh Business Stories is brought to you by Rathbones. Rathbones is one of the UK's leading wealth managers with an office right here in the city of Edinburgh. They have a long history of helping people plan and invest for the future they want, and believe there's one word you should live by: well. Well learned, well invested, well timed. Maybe you're scaling a business or climbing the career ladder, and you're earning bonuses, dividends, and a significant salary. Success is rewarding, but it often leaves you time poor. Rathbones understand the demands of business ownership and professional careers, because when you plan well, you can grow well, live well, and sleep well. Wherever you are on your wealth journey, Rathbones can help you go further, and they do it all well. To learn more, visit rathbones.link/EBS. Rathbones. Invest well, live well. When you invest, your capital is at risk.
We've been at, again, HTD is Heartland Technology Group, so if anybody's watching this, just to give a bit of insight to it, HTG was an organisation which was to really enhance and grow businesses and business owners to think about, not just about running their business, but also about, we had to put plans together around a business plan, life plan, legacy plan. So we had a number of, we were being challenged frequently regarding how we were going to lead, intentionally how we were going to lead. And Arlen was the architect of that journey for so many of us. In fact, they just celebrated 25 years this last month. And it was some of the insights which they offered us has stuck very much. So when Ally and I met in Orlando, and it was about 6 years ago, probably, maybe even longer.
We'll just go with a bunch of years since we're really accurate on it.
Yeah. 12-ty, as I call it. 1, 2, 3, 12-ty. And when we met, we started having a conversation. It's a normal thing within this HTG group that we want to combine all companies into one and we take over the world. That just seems to be the normal facet for any business owner who attends these groups. But nobody follows through until we. got together and we actually did something which was slightly unusual from everybody else. Everybody else was either acquiring or selling to someone else. We hadn't met anybody who had actually done a true merger.
Was a bit on that. We've all been in business for quite a long time, and you come across lots of self-professed experts, and they'll offer you guidance, but they kind of sort of talk it down to you as if they're God. Don't do a merger. There's no such thing as a merger. It's an acquisition in disguise. So you back away from this vision slowly. The upshot is you've got to be careful of the advice you take. And everyone said the merger was a bad idea. And that's when you probably heard the bit of wisdom from, I think it was actually one of our advisors at the time. And he said that, an acquisition is like buying a house. You go in and inspect it. You put in an offer, if you like it, and then you do some legal work to make sure it's okay and there's no dry rot or wet rot or any kind of damage to it. You move in and you get on with the renovation. But he said, a merger is like a marriage. What was he said?
Well, as he explained it, is when you're getting two people coming together, like any other marriage, you're going to have to give and take. There's going to be points where you're willing to accept what the other person's saying, and the other party is going to have to accept what you're willing to do. And then a good example is that, in a marriage, everybody's got their roles and their functions to do. Do you put down the bins in the morning? Who makes the bed? What are the duties? Who pays the bills? Who takes the kids to school? You have to give and take. Whereas we've always found, every time I speak to people who've done acquisitions, there's always one person who's there at the final say. Overall, and in a marriage,
it's the wife.
It's always the wife.
It's always the wife.
And there was a perfect example of it, and it was the ability to actually accept that there would have to be give and take. Now, one thing, we didn't get to that assumption very quickly. It did take us a little bit of time to work out. We'd said, this is a true merger, with all good intentions. But let's just say it took a little bit of time to work out what a true merger was actually going to actually mean.
Do you want to tell the bull analogy?
Well, it's one which has come out over time. Is that when Ally and I started speaking about what we were wanting to achieve, we called it a North Star. So the North Star was where we wanted to get to. So we would always look and say, we want to get to, that's the direction we've got to get to. And that was a teaching out of HTG as well. They would say, look, set out where you want to get to, and you'll be able to make your plans map towards where the direction of travel is. So as long as the North Star, and we'd spent a long time actually working out what that North Star would be. So we thought we'd got everything aligned. But there was obviously quite a difference. It was a little bit of a difference, the fact that I was a few years further on than Ally. There's 8 years difference between us. So our life plans are slightly different. My children are growing up, away from home, university, got their own careers. Ally's kids at the time were at school, if not going through university, and he was slightly different places. So when we actually look at that, my urgency might not have been the same as Ally's at the time. I had lots of things were in place, and less dependence, etc. So the story which we tell to one another is about the old bull and young bull. And Ally, could you tell this? I'm quite happy if you tell the story, but I'm.
You want me to get into trouble when they hit the punchline?
No, I'll tell the story. I'll take it to the point where and where to jump in. And the old analogy is the old bull and young bull two are standing at the top of the hill, and they're looking down the hill, and here's this field of cows there. And the young bull says, "Hey, why don't we run down and grab ourselves a cow?" We know what grab ourselves a cow means. We're going to run down and grab ourselves a cow. And the old bull says, "How about if we just wander down and grab them all?" I'll let you come in with the next part of the punchline there.
So by the time we finished arguing on how to get down the hill, the cows have left the field.
No cows.
It was Austen that came up with that, analogy initially, and I wasn't too sure what my part in the analogy was. I wasn't sure if I was the old bull, because I'm not quite ready for that yet, and I didn't want to be the annoying bull. But actually, when I think about it, I don't want to be one of the cows either, especially if the bulls manage to get down the field. But yeah, no, there was a big difference in what we actually wanted to achieve, but also a big difference in how we actually thought. I'm very ambitious. I actually want to change the world, and it's like, I make a difference. And it doesn't actually matter whether I'm successful at that or not. I just want to try. But that's not your style. You like to do things well.
Yeah, I would definitely say Ally wants to get things done right. But Ally's at a pace and a space to actually get that. Myself, I'd probably like to see things are done well, and when things need some thought and some process run
procrastination
be another word. And and we would get things done, but I would also like to see team, and I was a very strong one around, and we both are, but it was very much around seeing people within the company or within the business growing within the business. So I probably at a stage of my life where the business had done fairly well. The business was going in a direction which I was comfortable with. And I think probably when Ally came in, he was saying, no, that's not the direction I wanted to go in. And I wanted to go that bit faster. So the energy was coming from yourself to actually drive that forward. And I think one of the things which I would say, and I'll go back to the analogy of the marriage style, is that anybody who's going to go into a merger has to resolve what the roles and responsibilities of each of you are going to be involved in, and how you are going to engage. Now, if you don't get that sorted out initially, if you don't start that conversation, and that's what we took us a period of time to get to, but once we got to that point of agreeing the roles and responsibilities and sticking to them, then it became a much more effective team. And I would say at that stage, Ally had this larger amount of energy which he was put in, but I was also coming with maybe more around the governance and the fiduciary and the compliance side of actually, let's make sure this is done right, make sure the checks and measures are in place, let's make sure that we are delivering what we said we were doing.
Yeah, I'll probably jump in there before we talk about the good part of it, just to give an idea of how bad it can actually get. The dynamic between the two organizations was such that the One Stop, which was the company that I'd set up, we were a much faster paced organization. We adapted to change quicker, but we had less controls in place, because that wasn't something that really interested us or excited us.
Interested you?
Well, it didn't interest me at all.
Let's just be frank about it.
And I'd be lying if I said it does now. It's not really. That's you have to have people to take over the gaps in your particular skill sets. And whereas Clark's was a slower, methodical organization where they had documented processes, and that's where the clash of cultures really, really hit. Was that we were trying to make this change, but in the end, the One Stop actually nearly lost its entire help desk function in the transition.
We did.
We lost several staff who just went, we're not into this, and they were poached by competitors. And so with that issue, we then started to lose clients as well. So you have a situation where the pressure is really mounting. And that's also driving the quality of the conversation and the volume of the conversations. And I think it came to a point where we're like, right, this just isn't working. And that's when we had a conversation with yourself, Alan, and sort of said, right, what do we need to do here? And we sort of dug into it, and we're looking at where are the problems, what's going on. And that's when you had time to reflect. Yeah. Because really one of the key purposes of the merger was to help create an exit plan, a successful exit plan for Austen, being a bit older than I am. But also to create a business.
You can repeat that if you want.
You're a bit older. No, just in case anyone doesn't know. 8 years older than me. And so we'd both aligned around the objective. We wanted to build an IT company that was Scotland-wide. That was one of our real desires. Another one was to create an IT academy, which was also Scotland-wide and actually, which changed how IT was being delivered within schools to make sure that, there was kids coming into our industry, because we've had a massive issue in our industry about recruitment. And one of the things that drives up prices and stuff for clients is the fact that there are no staff there. So you have to offer exorbitant salaries. And so there were some real challenges there that we're trying to solve. But getting the business into a position where it was successfully merged and the roles and responsibilities were clearly defined, that was a real light bulb moment.
Yeah, that I remember. We came down to Edinburgh. Spent an afternoon with yourself. Probably one of the more uncomfortable afternoons I had. But one of the things which I've always learned, or has always been told me, is that sometimes you've got to go through a lot of pain. You got to go through pain to get pushing yourself out of people call it pushing yourself out of the comfort zone. And when you come out of that comfort zone, it's uncomfortable. That's why it's coming out of your comfort zone. It took 6 months we had a meeting in April and then finally actually get it across the line in October. If I do say so, it was probably one of the finest pieces of work that we'd ever done as a team. We'd spent time, it was intentional, it was thought through, it was planned, and it was executed. That to me is a good outcome when you get all those components in place. Now, you challenged hard that day, and I remember how uncomfortable it was asking me those questions. What do you want, Austen? What does the company require? What roles do you have? I was sitting there just asking myself, how can I get out of this room? I want to get away from this heat. This is uncomfortable. Ally, on that, I think you quite enjoy that element of having that conversation.
Well, I like conflict. I really like arguing with people. I actually
do you?
Yeah,
do you really?
I really do. I really do. And so it doesn't drain my energy in the ways it did for yourself. But the thing that drains my energy is when nothing actually happens. Like the whole point of argument or conflict is to say, right, well, what's the agreed plan? And you go, right, we're all in. What's actually happened is the other person just gone, I can't take this anymore, and walked away. And you're not actually any further forward. Different things drain energy for, differently for different people.
But go on, Alan, you were going to say?
No, I was going to say, so what came out of that exercise for you guys then, would you say?
Well, for the thing which came out of it was that in a marriage, frequently families come along, and we had a situation where we had 20 odd of us in the company, and they formed this mum and dad scenario. So somebody would come along to say to mum, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? And if they didn't like the answer, they would go to dad and say, hey, dad, can I do it? Can I do this? Can I do that? And dad would say, yeah, you can do it. And the next thing, they were off doing which answer they had received. And, the next person come along and says, why are you doing that? Well, I spoke to him and he told me it was okay if I went and did it this way. Nightmare. It's just not working. So
Actually, it was worse than that. They would come and ask me, and I said, have you asked Austen? And they go, yeah. I said, what did he say? He said, no. Okay, yes.
So the thing which came out of that was we purposefully worked out what the roles and roles and duties of each of us would do. We sat down, we thrashed it out. We looked at every single part of what we're doing in a day-to-day, and we agreed that you'll do that bit, I'll do that bit, and then it became clear. It got so much that actually you challenged me in this. I go back to this, and the amount of people I've spoken to about this is I spent 3 months just with a spreadsheet open. And every time I was doing something, I wrote down in the spreadsheet as to which department it was, what I was doing, why I was doing it, how urgent it was, the frequency. I was diligent. I know Ally did
3 months to write a spreadsheet.
3 months to write a spreadsheet. But I think what came out of that was we then had a definition of what our roles and responsibilities were. And we clearly wrote that down and we agreed it. We thrashed it out. Then went to our leadership team. We spoke to them about it. So by the time it was delivered to the company, it was very clear as to what Ally did, what I did. And since then, it's been very clear to the team as well where I sit in the business, where Ally sits in the business. The dubiety is so small that even our colleagues come through and says, is this for you or is this for Ally? I'm not sure exactly where it fits. And it's become very clear. We were able to explain it to the team very quickly. And Alan, you shared some of the information, which was in my room. Alan always refer back to that you have these frames with some guiding lights in them. And I've got in my room, got leadership and management. And Ally sits in the management side. He's operations, he's driving the business. My job is among leadership. So often if people come and ask me a question, if I think at any point it sits in the management, I'll just direct them back to Ally. And that has actually been really refreshing in the past year, where we can actually go and do the jobs which we do without this conflict, but also the team have got real. They've actually got clarity, and I think a lot of people define and demand that. That's what they're looking for a lot of time. Give us clarity. And clarity is now there. So much so, since we've done that, we've got 3 members of staff who have all stepped up. And I've been, probably one of the proudest things I've seen is just seeing people in the team moving up from, there's a book which I've read, which I always refer back to, which is Turn the Ship Around. Mm-hmm. And it's about this concept.
Arquette, isn't it?
Sorry?
David Arquette.
Yeah. I would say to me, it's probably one of the finest books and one of the best business books I've ever read. I'm sorry I hadn't read it until this year. And it speaks about going from leader followers to leader leaders. And I think we're now building in our company leader leaders. So people come to us and say, this is what I am going to do. This is where we're going. This is what I think we should be doing. And you're going, okay, if that sounds right. Or give some guidance. But that was something that's really changed the mindset in the business.
I'll put that into the sort of practicalities for anyone that chooses to listen. We went from a dysfunctional management team that is just watching us bicker to one that is actually full of energy. And so we have a 5-strong management team now. And so all of our effort now is actually in about building the management team. Whereas beforehand, it was Austen and I trying to build the business. Now we're spending the time building the management team. The management team then hopefully deliver a great service to our clients, and our clients build the business, because they are the ones that refer you on, or they are the ones that consume more. But the real, having people come to you with ideas on what they think they should do next, and you move into a kind of coaching role where you're saying, okay, tell me how you got there. Why do you think that's going to make a difference? And what do you expect to see happen? And then saying, right, okay, let's do it. The dynamic between the individual like that versus the one that's being told what to do is night and day. Absolutely. Absolute night and day. And
I would go one, just to add on to that, is that once people were demanding through the DPT, the professional development and reviews, was we want clarity. Once they were given clarity and they knew what the remit was, all of a sudden you were creating not monsters, you were creating people who are actually really designed to actually progress and move forward, because they now knew what was expected of them. To me, that was it's been quite inspiring to actually see that happen over the past year. And I commend Ally and the team for doing that.
I was funny that you just sort of commending there. I was about to say something similar to yourself there, which was a commendation, not another criticism. It all started with you actually choosing to let go. Yeah. And actually, because the principal problem was neither of us wanted to give up control. And that's where the argument came from.
there's a book out there. It's called Giver's Gain. I'm sure it's from Giver's Gain, and it tells the story of the chap who he falls off a cliff and he's holding on to the vine, and the term is let go of the vine, and he's holding on to the vine. He's looking down to the crevice below him, and he's shouting up, "Help me! Help me!" And this voice from above, "Let go of the vine! Let go of the vine!" And he shout up, "Is there anybody else up there?" And it felt a little bit like that. Don't worry, I'm going to let go of the vine, because who's up there? I'm really not sure if they can if that's the right thing to do. But the fact of the matter was, we took a lot of effort and time to get to that position. And I think in a merger, unlike an acquisition, that added a huge amount of value onto the combination of the two organizations. And there was actually, the whole thing is, we often speak about a merger as 2 + 2 will equal 5. Well, quite frankly, 2 + 2 could often mean 3. But it takes a lot of effort, and I would say intentional effort on the part of the two of us to actually try and turn it around into 5.
And why did you not just go down the acquisition route? If a merger is so difficult, there's a lot of, why not just let the younger bull come in?
Well, there's an interesting point to that one, which would be along the lines of a lot of us in our industry will talk a great game about let's merge two organizations. I mean, I remember we were in a meeting, there was 8 of us, and I always remember there was 8 of us were going to merge the companies all together. And we then said at one point, well, who's going to lead the company? And there was one guy, well, we both know who he was, says, I'll lead it. And I just laughed. I just like, this is absolutely no way on earth. These other 7 people weren't going to allow this one guy to lead this organization. So
there's definitely a maturity piece in it. Remember, a lot of business owners, this is what they've dedicated their life to.
Yeah.
Or for many of them, it's their pension, it's their identity, it's all wrapped up in
legacy. One of the big things is about this will be, and my brother always said the analogy of when you walk down the street, in Leith or any other city, and you meet somebody, this is your leg. Somebody says, remember, you were the guy that ran that company. And how did you behave? What was your behaviour?
I think it was more of we wanted to do the merger because it was less risky, in our opinions, because we both felt we could run a successful organisation. But fear usually sits behind most business decisions, especially when they're quite large. It's like, if I sell my business, what am I going to do? What's my next step? And also, did I get out with the maximum amount of revenue or value or protection for my family for that next part of the journey? And so I think really, the merger was really a 5-6 year exit strategy. Where you could move towards it. I think that would make sense.
It's a very big truth. Yeah.
So it is actually probably about risk tolerance that actually dictates that it's a merger rather than an acquisition. Interestingly enough now, though, we've just had our strategic meeting this year, and we've now committed to paper an activity that we're actually going to do our own acquisition to further that next stage of the company. And that will give us boots on the ground in Glasgow. But the real reason behind that for myself is that, with the IT Academy, so we now teach about 30 students an IT foundation apprenticeship. And we've actually doubled the number of students in Scotland who actually come out with this qualification. But we'd like to actually progress that across the country, because what people are not realizing yet is just how big the AI transformation is actually going to be for all businesses. And so at the moment we're seeing, the current rate of unemployment in Scotland is around about 3 to 4%. Feel free to fact check that. But as a member of the DYW, I know that youth unemployment is actually running about 15% now. And that's including people coming out of university. And that's largely driven by a reduction in entry-level job roles. And that's a real problem for society to actually to deal with. And so what we're really needing to do is go, how do we train up enough people to allow the country to actually transition into using AI within their businesses, but reducing the amount of social disruption caused by that. And so we see the academy as a potential route to make sure that all of Scotland's got access to students who have been trained up in AI and to be able to use in their business. I'm not sure why we got there, but that seemed to be an appropriate answer to your question.
But I know that that's a particular point of pride for you, Ally, as well, because I know you'd had that kind of vision to have an academy quite not some years ago.
It is. I mean, that was a red line. When we were actually saying, what are the things that we want to achieve, and I said that the academy was one of those things.
And that's actually an example of a compromise, where Ally and I were speaking about that, and Ally had come along and says, "Look, we want to go build this academy." I wasn't convinced of it at the time. I wasn't sure exactly what this was, but like any other difference of when we go back to the difference between buying a house or going into a marriage scenario, you acquire, you just say what it's going to be. In this occasion, we were willing to go. To be fair, I think the two of us were willing to actually engage in something which we weren't actually sure what would actually come out the other side of it. And I think that is a real character of the two of us, that we were actually willing to do that. And yeah, it's a really interesting journey around the academy. And it's not fully baked yet. It's still in pre-state. Well, pre's probably wrong. It's probably beyond pre-state. It's now starting to evolve.
It's in its second evolving year. State. We've got 2 cohorts of students, and we've had a cohort of students last year who graduated. But the key point on it is that it's all funded by us.
Yeah.
It's one of our core. So one of the core values of Jera is relentless learning, because in my mind, people who are learning and training are much more engaged with what's going on in the world. They're engaged in their jobs. They're just better. And so it's really part of our culture. And so, but for something to be a core value, you have to put resource into it, even if it's not actually generating something for you. You have to stand by it, even if it's a bit of a challenge. And it is a challenge. We've got some of our team involved delivering that. And there's definitely other places where we could better utilize them to the benefit of the business. But we've said, no, this is a core thing that we want to achieve. So we push through.
And I guess we had a previous guest on talking about AI and how they're really embracing AI. But actually the commitment for the team to invest time in understanding all the different tools, the ones that work, the ones that don't work as well, that's a significant investment. And if you're at the forefront of helping your clients to do that, tell us more about how you kind of encourage that culture within the team.
Within our team, or how we help our clients
within your team to say, well, what's the kind of the right AI solutions for them?
Oh, as far as coming up with what is the right AI solutions, I think we're only at the start of this journey.
You're talking about the industry here, not Jera.
Yeah, and I'll take, because there's Jera, but there's the industry. And I've spent quite a bit of time over the past 6 months listening, absorbing, understanding. And AI is still in its infancy at the present moment. It hasn't been fully baked yet, and it's there. It's coming into the industry, coming into all industries really quickly. And I think even by the time this gets out, we're going to see changes within the next few months, next year. And it's constant. So I don't think it's fully baked in, but I do think it's something that we all have to be aware of. And I think that's part of what we're talking about here.
I mean, from a team point of view, the IT industry reinvents itself every 3 to 4 years anyway. And so your team constantly have to be upskilling. You can't sit back and say, oh, I got that exam back in 2003. It's totally not relevant anymore. The challenge we have at the moment is, so there's a lot of hype around AI, there's a lot of marketing pressure, and everybody's feeling that. especially because it's it's brandishing around, figures like reduce your costs by 50%, charge your clients more and deliver a better service because you've now got experts doing this and it's all programmed. Because the reality is people are messy. And you don't get perfection, but the idea is that AI will deliver perfection. But it's not really going to go like that. Because what tends to happen, and this is opinion, and any economist feel free to challenge, but once something happens in the market and it shifts, the price for current products or services drops once everyone has access to that, until the market finds a new sort of normal level. Mm-hmm. And so there's a very short period of time where you can actually sort of gain that extra, percentage points to the bottom line. And so that puts this pressure on move just in case you miss out. But we've spoken to quite a few providers, and fundamentally at this point, a lot of it is vaporware. It's not really practical for people to actually implement it.
95% of all AI cases are failed right now. 95%.
And so businesses are having to be a little bit canny on how they do this. And so what we're actually saying to them is that, look, have a look at your business. Have a look at your business model first. Mm-hmm. And then say, right, what are the things that we could do with improving? Or what are the numbers that we need to change? Mm-hmm. And then go and say, right, is there an AI out there that could help us with this? Or should we just be looking at a bit of business process automation? And start with that, but start small. But every business needs to have someone who's actually looking at this and picking up on it. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily going to be led by IT companies like ourselves. Mm-hmm. It could be external people. It might even be within the organization. It could be somebody else in, say, for example, the legal profession that's actually driving it forward. So it's just keep your ears open just now, but don't panic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Guys, we ask all our guests, what is your guiding principle in business?
Not to do what Austen says. That's mine. Actually, that's what it was. It's not that now.
One of mine was, and it came from my brother, is it's not what you do right that you're measured by. It's how you turn up when it's not. And I've always stuck with that. And I've won great business off it. I have been measured on that. I have very loyal clients who come to me because of how we turned up when something didn't go right. We stood shoulder to shoulder. We leaned in. We had a client who had a cyber attack a couple of years ago. And it's how we showed up. And it's how we showed up with the team as well. Mm-hmm. We supported the team. I talk about how we had to deal with some really difficult conversation, and we didn't run away. We didn't not answer the phone. We responded. We leaned in and we dealt with it. So that part to me has always been an important part. I would say that was one of my guiding lights.
That's a tough question, because it probably changes every year or so as I read another book and go, right, that's my new philosophy. Fundamentally, I think at the end of the day, you have to care. And it applies to all aspects of your life. Care about waking up well, care about yourself, how you look after yourself, care about those around about you, care about what you do during the day, care about what other people think without becoming a slave to it. But care about the impact. What is the difference that you're going to make in your life? I think it was Stephen Covey that actually said, begin with the end in mind. And I remember doing an exercise where you fall asleep and you're dreaming and you're rowing. You're in a rowing boat and you're rowing across the sea and you end up on an island. And you scramble up the beach and you sort of head over this sort of small rise and you see a big group of people and there's a big fire there and they're all celebrating and they're all having a laugh and they're just in a good place. And so you descend down the hill to actually see what they're actually talking about. But you can't interact with them. And you see these people, and they'll stand up and they're speaking to the rest of the crowd. And you look over the shoulder of one of the people that are speaking, and you see they're actually talking about you. Because you're actually dead. And they're talking stories about what you've done and what you've achieved and the legacy that you've actually left behind. And so the only thing you can really do in this life is say, what legacy do I want to leave behind?
Very nice.
Guys, thank you for coming on, sharing your story, and we wish you all the luck in the future.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Edinburgh Business Stories. If you found it useful or inspiring, please do subscribe and follow along for more conversations just like this. And why not share it with your friends too, so that more people can hear these inspiring stories. We'd also love it if you could rate and review this podcast wherever you're listening. This helps more people to find us and ensures that we can keep bringing you these stories for years to come. And if there's someone you think that we should speak to, let us know. We're always looking for great stories to share. You can email us at edinburgh@businessstories.co.uk. And as always, a big thank you to Rathbones for partnering with us on this episode. Rathbones. Invest well, live well.